Good morning, everyone. Apparently, after missing 2 weeks of school for tomogamy, I didn't get enough snow and needed 1 day more. 10 out of 10 would recommend taking JOL or SOL. Talk about snow day every day. I appreciate you all being here today. It truly means everything to have my entire AC family here. The thought of standing up in front of a large group of people and sharing my heart has me pretty terrified. Those closest to me know I love holding things in and trying to deal with all the world's problems on my own. But recently, I have been working on this, and what better way to overcome my fear than to open up to a chapel full of people. I'm going to share with you a series of stories in which I believe have shaped who I am today. The good and bad, which I'm equally as grateful to have experienced, for they have allowed me to see things in a unique perspective, to be kinder to others and myself. I read a book at the end of my senior 1 year entitled The 4 Agreements. Yes, I read on my spare time. Shocker, I know, why aren't I academics prefect? I loved it so much, I actually committed a crime and tore out the inside cover to hang above my desk as a constant reminder. Sorry to all the horrified English teachers. These agreements are applicable to basically every aspect of life, and I encourage you to see how they can challenge your mindset. The following are agreements to be had with yourself and not anyone else. Number 1, be impeccable with your word, using the power of your word in the direction of love. In Upper 2 and Senior 1, I had the honor of being a part of the best club at Appleby, Buddies Are Us. Buddies is a club that pairs up with a group of high school students who are differently abled. We meet a couple times a month to play games, watch movies, dance, and eat lots of food. My buddy is Shannon, also known as Shimmy Shannon. After being friends with Shimmy for 3 years, she has taught me a whole lot more than I could have ever imagined. Shimmy has the kindest soul, brightest smile, and best dance moves you will ever see. She is never hateful towards anyone, and she respects others by speaking kind words and acting with integrity. I don't know if I could count all the letters, cards, drawings, or texts I have received from Shimmy that radiate love. What amazes me most is that she is so kind, despite facing challenges most of us could not imagine. I am inspired each day by Shimmy to be kinder to each person I encounter. So, in honor of Shimmy, when you leave this chapel today, you will receive a piece of paper from the incredible chapel wardens to write a message to love to somebody in your life. I am challenging all of you to find 2 minutes that you can focus all of your positive vibes on spreading kindness. When you're done writing your note, I want you to read it to that person by the end of this week. Let them know how much they mean to you. It doesn't even need to be someone who you would describe as being close with. Every one of us is experiencing extraordinary challenges each day, and you never know how one kind note may impact them. The way we treat people is huge. It's everything. Let's be good to one another. Number 2, don't take anything personally. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality. When you are immune to this, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. When I was in grade 5, I experienced the scariest moment of my life, something that is still difficult for me to talk about years later. I was outside playing with all of the neighborhood kids when an older boy who also lives on our street approached me. Moments later, I found myself sitting on the sidewalk with a knife against my throat, wondering what was going to happen next. I can still remember the words he used to make me feel like I meant absolutely nothing to this world. But somebody was watching over me that day, and a neighbor quickly stepped in and 911 was called. As I stand here today, you would never know. I don't have a cool scar on my throat to prove how tough I was. But it took me a long time to feel normal. I lived in fear each day of it happening again and spent many nights sleeping in my parents' bed. Once the boy moved away, a lot of my stress and anxiety was lifted. However, because I was no longer consumed with fear, I was able to really think about what had happened and why it had happened to me. So, I began coming up with reasons why he did this to me. Maybe it was because I was smaller than all the other kids, or because I didn't know all my times tables yet. Maybe I wasn't nice enough, or I wasn't good enough. I needed to find out why I was the victim so I could fix it, fix me. I went through a really difficult time until I realized that this actually had nothing to do with me at all. I'm not trying to defend that boy's actions, but I believe he did it because of his own suffering. Because I know that there is good in all of us, I realize now that it was not a personal attack towards me. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it really could have been any of us. Me being able to understand this took a giant weight off my shoulders and allowed me to get back to being me, or should I say, keeping it real. Number 3, don't make assumptions. Here is a double whammy that has stuck with me all throughout my Appleby career. After closing day at the end of my middle 1 year, I eagerly waited for report cards to go live. I was waiting to see my final grades and especially my overall average after completing my first year at Appleby. When I logged onto eSchool to see that my average fell short of my Optimates goal, I was devastated. Since the first reporting period, my average had been consistently climbing, and I had made the assumption that I would for sure achieve Optimates. But despite my so-called failure, I was able to grow in a big way. I worked harder than I'd ever done before during the next school year and achieved my goals. Then I set more goals for myself in all aspects of my life. Seeing how fast I could complete my Duke of Ed award levels, drinking 2 liters of water each day, reaching 5'2". It wasn't until much later, when I kept reaching my goals, that I learned I was still making a horrible assumption. I was assuming that the goals I was shooting for would determine my happiness or future success. In reality, this is not the case. So, I decided after doing my bronze and silver Duke of Ed in 1 year that I would hold up on gold and only complete it if I happened to meet all the requirements, because the certificate didn't bring me any happiness. I realized that the final product of receiving an award didn't mean much at all to me, but the experience I would go through meant everything. When deciding my courses going into grade 12, I dropped math, biology, and chemistry because they brought me so much stress and anxiety in grade 11. For a solid hour before and after one of these classes, I would feel horrible, like physically sick. One day, as Shadi was going into the chem lab and I was leaving, she was all excited and happy and extremely loud, as usual, asking me, "What's up, Nick Mama?" Only to realize I was crying. As anyone would be, she was extremely confused as to why I was so upset when there was nothing seriously wrong, besides the fact that I just endured another chem test. Now, even though most laugh when I list my course load for the year, I am proud to say I get excited going to my many art courses, and I am confident that they will still lead me to success one day. I really hope that you are all able to find what makes you as happy as creating makes me. Just know it took 16 years of my life and a super long, eye-opening life chat with Miss Hagee to figure it out for me. And although super cheesy, Ralph Waldo Emerson was so right when he said, "Life is a journey, not a destination." I made an assumption and got caught up in the end reward or goal, but the process means so much more. Number 4, always do your best. Under any circumstance, simply do your best. I want you all to meet my most favorite person. If you turn around, you'll see a taller, debatably smarter, redhead version of myself. And no, I'm not talking about Mr. Boytchuk. My mom grew up in a small town in British Columbia during what was called the 60s scoop. Her mother had no maternal rights because she was a First Nations person, and her father left their family when she was only 2 years old. So, she spent years bouncing around in the foster care system. My mom didn't have a privileged start to life. She wasn't given the opportunities to succeed like many of us have. But she tried her best regardless of having all the odds stacked against her. She literally saved up pennies to get herself into university, back in the day when pennies were still a thing. But she did the absolute best she could. When my mom and I were the victim of a car crash, she had to redefine what her best was. She ended up losing a disc in her back, and since the chances of coming out of surgery without being confined to a wheelchair were little to none, she went without it and faces excruciating pain on a regular basis. Because of this, her whole life changed. She couldn't work for years, and it was even more difficult taking care of my brother and me. She didn't feel bad for herself or give up, though. She simply redefined what her best was and kept going. Now, while the specifics of this circumstance is extreme, the morals and lessons to be learned are universally applicable to all of us. Our best is constantly changing. When we are sick, we can't expect ourselves to perform as well as when we are having the best day of our life. My mom is always reminding me, you play the hand God gave you, the best way you can. The hand is what life throws at you. The circumstances you are unable to control, but are forced to deal with. When you are given a better card, play it as well as you can. And when you are given a card that scares you, challenges you, or discourages you, you must play it as well as you can. These past few months, whenever chapel speeches were brought up amongst my friends, I would always say, I have no idea what I'll write. I'm only 17. I was picturing some grand advice I would need to give that could only take decades of life experience to figure out. And after almost 2 decades, the one thing I want you to take out of these stories I've shared today is actually quite simple. We are all capable of doing it every day, but I believe is extraordinarily powerful. And that is to be kind. Be impeccable with your word. Deliver that note this week and continue to spread love to those around you, especially to those who are struggling with being kind themselves. I am so proud of you, middle school, for already setting the tone with this, with the AC Kindness Rocks. And I can't wait to see how far it comes when you're in grade 12. Don't take anything personally or make assumptions. In other words, be kind to yourself. Senior 2s, we have accomplished incredible things, and we're so close to graduation. We deserve all the happiness in the world, and that starts with how we treat ourselves. Always do your best. We are all amazing beings capable of extraordinary things. And do the best you can in each moment, where you are currently at. Don't sell yourself short, but also know that some days will be harder than others, and your best changes constantly. Now, in honor of the one who is always there when I need her, to rant to, laugh at, cry with, or scare, my roommate, best friend, and arguably the better half to the Insta-famous account at nick.grace, please stand and rise to sing hymn number 352, Amazing Grace.